risk functions have really needed to keep pace. And what I'm going to share today is in and around the fact that there's no real one special way to get through this, one special way to actually approach this, that organisations, and you'll hear from a couple today, are coming at it from very, very different angles. Technology and the increased leverage of technology has very much by, over almost 3/4 of executives, already seen as a key risk to growth, that need to actually accelerate that digital ambition. In saying that, at the same time, over almost 50% of executives have also been watching the cost of compliance. Regulation cost is increasing at the tsunami of new regulatory requirements that we're dealing with, and there's just more that seems to be on the way. Around about 70% also struggle with getting an integrated, complete view of the risks that they're facing, and similarly really struggle to predict what might happen next and where to focus their attention. But at the same time, and very much in response to that need, what we have is around about 70% of organisations looking at GRC technology and the role that it could play in actually dealing with some of this new emerging risk. So dealing with this can be really overwhelming. If you think about the technology options that are out there, there are literally thousands of solutions that are available for leverage for dealing with some of these. Right now, many organisations are either dealing with point solutions to deal with a specific problem at the time. They're seeking to automate some of what they're doing now through smart controls and intelligent controls automation and specialised technology that go a long way to automating some of those controls. But similarly, they're seeking to integrate that information. Organisations are at varying speeds with each of these. Where organisations are also trying to get to as a bit of an end game, is about integrating this information, and not just integrating within a discrete process, but right across the enterprise, across everything you're doing, and across all of the lines of defence. Really, this is about taking your strategy, looking at what are the key risks that exist against those, and being able to derive insight. But again, there is no one solution. There's certainly, most organisations are moving towards having an integrated platform that aggregates risk and control information from right across the organisation, but no one's achieving this on a single platform alone. We're even finding that organisations that have done this in the most optimal way possible will still have up to 6 to 8 platforms in total, but certainly moving a long way, through to integrating them all together. So how do you actually get on the right track with this? Right. Well, first of all, it's about setting a strategy. It is about setting, what it is that you're trying to achieve over an extended period of time. But it's also about starting small and building on successes. Now, these are not programs of activity where you say, this is where we're going to get to in 12 months from now. It's more about planning what the next 12 weeks might look like. Risk and control activity does need to be very much integrated to the business. It can't be bolt-on. If it's built in, it feels just like another step in the activity, and it actually then gets assessed to ensure that it's compliant and digital by design as well. You need to be very pragmatic. You need to not try and over-engineer, but you also need to be keeping pace with that digital ambition. You need to acknowledge that as the maturity of the organisation evolves and as that shift into digital evolves, similarly, risk needs to move with that, but not too far. No need to over-engineer in this space. Like all technology-enabled change programs, adoption is absolutely key. You cannot overlook the change management element of this. This is really about driving an improved risk culture. Similarly, the user experience is absolutely vital. And then finally, it needs to be executive-led. Tone from the top does not go away. It needs to be that top-down drive to show that risk is an element of the business that is taken really seriously, and you're able to realise the benefits from some of the digital automation. IRM, or integrated risk management, needs to be agile. You need to not be thinking about setting this up as a program of significant months, significant years. It needs to be very pragmatic. It needs to be organic in the way that it keeps pace with how organisations, shift with their risk maturity agendas.
Risk is all about good decision making, and in that sense, it's at the core of our digitisation work. It's not a separate initiative. It's actually a key element of the transformation. You gave a great example earlier that creates different risk points for us as an insurer in the claims experience as we digitise, and that risk has to be considered in the design activity and really truly sort of embedded in the program. So I think for us, by having risk at the core of the transformation, we sort of avoid it being an add-on or an assurance activity to the digitisation journey. It's not seen as a poor cousin, and in fact, it really becomes the number one priority across the enterprise. I think for us that the vision is all about a truly connected decision-making approach, and from a tech perspective, to that end, we've taken a platform approach to it. And you mentioned earlier lots of different tools and lots of different ways of approaching this. For us, we've used tools and a platform which was already core to our environment. So we see the opportunity in connecting data to build risk insights that we didn't even know about previously, to take a more coordinated action and more informed decision approach through bringing all those data sources together. So I'm talking about data sources and tooling in business continuity, in configuration management, disaster recovery, incident management, obligation management, data analytics, all of the sort of disparate data sources around the enterprise, that by bringing them together from a risk perspective, we can actually get to improved insights and hopefully that better decision making. Risk systems can become a bit institutionalized. So what we've done is taken a really sprint-based kind of agile approach, and that served us really well. So it's gained a lot of focus. It's allowed us to collectively sort of demonstrate success and gain momentum, and really kind of change the brand and nature of what risk platforms might be able to do across the enterprise. And we're certainly not there yet, but we can sort of feel that starting to build through the enterprise. We've also learned that we've got to be prepared to put things out there when they're not right. So imperfect solutions, MVPs, and then iterate as we go, both on systems but also on sort of process work. And in fact, it's been a great opportunity to kind of build buy-in through having some of that conversation and discussion. And the final one maybe I'll add is just alignment between all the lines of risk has been really critical for us. So it's a team sport. We've been very fortunate to have a collaborative line 1, line 2, line 3, and indeed external auditor environment. So the boundaries and segregation responsibilities are clear, but that doesn't prevent collaboration around the improvement activity itself. So a few things that might be worth considering as others embark on the same kind of journey. Well, I think firstly we know we'll never be done. So it's a journey, a continual improvement, and as I say, the sort of sprint-based mindset has really helped us with that. What we'd like to have, though, is a really industrialized risk platform, one that connects all of the types of data sources I was describing earlier. And if we're managing our business well, then we're managing risk well, and vice versa. So that's sort of where we'd like to get to. As a technologist, I want to see risk be engaging in a really different way to how I've typically seen it. I'd like to see people engaging and updating their risks on their mobile devices while they're waiting for a coffee rather than doing their email. But I'd love us to get to a point where the entire workforce is participating in risk, and therefore collectively we're getting a much better view across our company that allows us to make those better decisions. So that's sort of where we'd like to get to.
Our journey began with 4 disparate systems which didn't talk to each other. They would only make sense if you took extracts from the systems and manually stitched the data together to try to make a report from which you would try to make a decision. The push for consolidation was the first implementation for our module of the PLC with our operational rate. And bringing all the data together and getting 14,000 plus people onboarded, all using a new system, taught us a lot about change adoption, taught us a lot about the data, what's actually going on. And now we're seeing value and the journey of, right, we could automate other governance processes, link it together, put the data cleaner, and certainly simplify the data. what could that show us and what could that teach us? We're finding the benefits of big data. So we found, for example, control tests that were religiously done for months and months, for years and years. When we've automated it and joined it with policies, joined it with processes across the different regulations that they have to match up with, you find there's a couple of thousand tests that were actually didn't need to be done, regulation change, process actually changed. So, and then you find the gap. So you start to be more focused, more aware, and more in control of actually what's important, what's not important, and where should you be putting more of your because of those successes and those early successes, we are now have a lot of back-in across the first, second, and third line of more automation of regulatory obligation, attestation, policy, and document standards. And as you start to bring all of this data together, you can see the richness of it as any regulation affecting a policy change will impact process changes and will naturally should lead to your control test changes. So now you can apply the right measures, you can apply the right linkages as to the expectations from your governments and your regulators that you deal with. And this is all about improving the client experience. For us, it's obviously as a bank, as a financial institution, we need to be always in compliant, but always growing from and improving the client experience from those regulations. So we can see, for example, something like GDPR, I think that was mentioned before, that had different interpretations across different countries. Now, if we started to put that through the systems, we could see, right, we can tackle most of it one way, and then there's some regional flavors that will need a different solution. And how will we apply those? And how will we do this in a more effective way that makes sense for the organization and makes sense for our clients? Obviously, trusting our data and that we've got the right data. Getting that senior buy-in of, we know each of your different teams has different levels of functionality. We need your support to go with the out of the box. The 50, 60%, let's start there. Let's see what works, because there'll be features that some teams have never used before out of the box. And there's a lot of learning, change adoption. People only learn as they use the tool. No matter how great the marketing is, I don't need that because I've never used that. It's only when this is a different way of doing something that you were doing in 3 steps, you could do in 1 now. And that learning as people have hands-on fingers on the system, that can reduce the need for further customization and ideally lead to configuration changes that work for the organization. Not work for one, it work for the organization. The organization, certainly as the aggregate of data is coming up to us, much more clearer understanding of where should we be focused, where are we, it's my earlier point about you see players go up all over the place as different events and different issues happen. Understanding why, understanding where they could happen, so moving into the more predictive stage rather than the reactive stage. That's certainly leading to us to understand or be more cognizant and aware of our risk. Where do we want to focus on? I think as an organisation, that has been the pull factor because of those successes. Why, if we found that event and we've dealt with it well, how can I use that in another region or another product or another business line? One of the strange learnings from this is we may have too much data. So when you bring together 4 disparate systems, there's different data sets and you're trying to make sense of all of it together. So one thing we've learned is, as we move forward with a more simpler and more agile work environment, and there's some data points that we just may need to see because they're not actually adding value to the big picture as we start to bring multiple data sets together.
risk management has often been, talking about in the past, we're very good at lagging risk indicators, not so good at leading risk indicators, mainly because you didn't have that data. So now we're almost at the point where we're saying, okay, we're almost like that, when I used to ride my bike as a child and the dog would come and try and nip at my heels. But the minute I stopped my bike, the dog didn't really know what to do with my leg or the bike itself really. So I think we're almost at that point where we're saying, okay, we've always said we could make better decision making if we had the data. So we're at that juncture where we have the data. What are we going to do with it to provide better insights? Is it going to be we're going to be able to do more stress testing, scenario planning, horizon scanning? I think the answer to this is really whatever the answer to this is, it's really about being able to look forward and provide management with better risk data to help them make their risk decisions.